Nikkita, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so, the defund movement is living on years and years of abolitionist work. The campaigns that I've personally been a part of that are also built upon many other elders' abolitionist work, like No New Youth Jail, Block the Bunker, um, have helped to set the foreground for us to be having these mainstream conversations about what does public safety really mean. And that's actually what I wish people would latch onto is defunding the police is really about asking that question of what does it mean for public safety to work for everyone, for everyone to get to have the opportunity of being criminalized or having to have encounters with armed police. The Seattle Police Department gets $410 million a year to continue to perpetuate a public safety system that does not work for all residents in our city. And when we look at the fact that in the last 3 months, $6.3 million has been spent on policing protests, which is the equivalent of what I believe is 420 tiny homes, it's very disconcerting because it shows us the priorities of our city. I think that our budget is a moral document. It essentially shows us who and what we value. And so as we enter into this budget season, I would actually ask our city council members and our mayor, who and what do you value? And if it is people and planet above property and profit, then we will focus on figuring out how resources can be repurposed to actually be going towards those things that keep people housed, get people housed, keep people stable, and having access to those resources we know help people thrive. And there are some really clear budget asks that can be happening right now. Obviously, the movement has said we want to defund by 50%, which in my opinion is actually that's the movement being reasonable, right? Because the Seattle Police Department's budget has grown by over $200 million in the last 6 years. $200 million is an obscene increase. That's like $1.2 billion, right? That's a lot of money. That in the last 5 years we've been in a housing affordability crisis that the city's actually acknowledged as a state of emergency, and yet we have not made any significant changes towards how we spend our dollars. One significant example of this is the Jumpstart package that the city council negotiated down from $86 million down to 50-some million dollars. And now it's being held up by the mayor's office with a refusal to actually put it into action as families in the midst of this economic depression are struggling to hold on to their homes. Sometimes it feels like our city actually wants to make more people homeless than it wants to get people housed. And so I think that as we move into this budget season, taking the values of the defund movement is important. Defund is really about invest, and it's about investing in communities. It's about, honestly, reparations to Black and Indigenous communities that have been systematically and generationally terrorized and disenfranchised from having economic viability and thriving, not just in our region, but nationally. And it is about imagining a future where the way we spend our money as a city, as a county, because let's not forget the county has $11.1 billion budget and the city has a $6.1 billion budget. Defund is about investing in those things that we know keep people healthy. So as we move into the 2021 budget, I really encourage people to be taking the value of investment in community and pushing that on every aspect of the Seattle City Council budget and the King County Council budget. Don't let King County get out of this without also being accountable for the way in which they've invested in the criminal punishment system and things that push people out of their homes and into unsafe spaces. Push them to have to make different investments as well. Like their budget is also a moral document about who and what we value.
Thank you so much for that. Sharon, that's a real tough act to follow, but let's hear your thoughts on this.
Well, it used to be maybe, in terms of the housing movement, 20 years ago, we used to fight against the demolition and loss of low-income housing. And then that moved into, we were losing more affordable housing through rent increases, right? So every time you build an affordable housing building, you're probably losing 4 times as many units through rent increases. So of course, housing is very, very complex, but there are ways, and there are successful ways of tackling not just housing, but income and the city's priorities. But look at Seattle. Seattle, we were a trendsetter on the $15 minimum wage, right? There was lots of skepticism, and now it's like, you know, common, right? Everybody's doing a minimum wage increase, right? Seattle was actually the first. Lehigh worked with DESC. We were the first to do the first Housing First project, 1811 Eastlake. And now permanent supportive housing has been a national, like, you know, best practice, right? And Seattle is now the center of, we have the most tiny house villages in the country. If you add up, we have tiny houses in Seattle, we have tiny houses in Olympia and Tacoma. So, you know, we can be the center of innovation, but we have to redirect the city's budget accordingly. We can't just say, oh, we've got, you know, a handful of permanent supportive housing. They win national awards. Aren't we great, right? We have a massive problem right now with the shelters. Our shelter system is not obviously holding up with the COVID pandemic. And so we are very concerned that so many shelter beds are going to be lost, right? If you have to socially distance, right? Is Mary's Place going to lose like hundreds of beds for homeless families with children? Are the shelters housing homeless young adults going to have to, like, you know, space people apart, right? Once you're in a community center, you can't stay in a community center forever, right? Can you stay at the Seattle Center, you know, flag pavilion forever? No. So this is the problem. We need the mayor and council to take the initiative from Jumpstart and triple, quadruple it. It's absolutely important to do this. We have, I'll give you an example. The U District Urban Rest Stop is going to have to shut down end of this year. Roots, which is a shelter for homeless young adults in the U District, also has to move because the church sold the land to a, you know, private developer, right? Well, guess what? Sound Transit has a wonderful site that they've been using for the station, you know, staging for construction. Why not request that Sound Transit use that extra land that they won't need after they finish the station to put a urban rest stop on the first floor and put low-income housing above? We have public land, as you know, as Juan mentioned, right? We actually have a lot of public property that can be used to develop new housing, or frankly, for tiny house villages. Tiny house villages are great. You can set them up in 5 weeks. I mean, we could basically set up more tiny house villages in Seattle to address all the homeless individuals that are unsheltered, right? And we need more tiny house villages, and they're cost effective, and they have a high success rate of moving people into long-term housing. So we have 2 versions of tiny houses. One is self-managed, where the residents are, you know, democratic decision-making and develop a sense of community, and self-managed, and everyone has chores, and, you know, it's very safe and secure. And then we also have the other version, which is more a harm reduction, housing first model, which is staffed 24/7. And we need to expand resources that we know will work in the community. Permanent supportive housing, housing for low-wage workers, housing for veterans, seniors. We can do this because we've shown the country that we can be a leader in doing solutions that work. It's not like, you know, you make an investment and you don't know what happens, right? That's what the critics want to say. The critics who are saying Seattle's dying, well, they missed the whole part of our success. And real change is so important because you tell the story of our success. all the time, every issue. You're there fighting with us, fighting on all the legislation and all the bills that are necessary for the city to direct its resources. So I want to thank you for the incredible advocacy, real change, and everybody else does for all of us.
Thank you so much, Sharon. You know, we could not do any of the work that we do without the amazing community that surrounds us. And that includes people like you, people like Juan, people like Nikkita. And I appreciate all of you so much for joining us this morning. Don't go away. We're going to take just a little bit of a break here to let me revert to my script here. We need to take a quick little break here to share our fundraising goals with you. But when we come back, you all, and by you all, I mean the folks out there who are listening to this, you all are going to have your chance to submit more questions to the panelists, and you can click on the Q&A icon again below to submit those questions. Each year, our annual breakfast is our major fundraising event of the year. It's really our only fundraising event of the year. And this year we can't gather in person to celebrate the hard work of our community, but I'm humbled to see how many of you have turned out this week to support our important work. We have raised $87,310.50 so far toward our critical goal of $146,610, and we can only get there with your support. Each gift helps power our courageous advocacy, low barrier work opportunities, and the award-winning journalism that you have come to expect from Real Change for the last 26 years.